With my coat snugly about me and the wind blowing through my hair, I stood at the edge of the dealership parking lot. My daughter-in-law, Chloe, was laughing so hard that her head was leaned back and her long hair was pouring over the headrest of her brand-new luxury SUV when I noticed her from across the lot. Her pals were gathered around her, making movies and taking photographs as if they had just been at a royal coronation. They had no idea what they were celebrating. However, I did. I saved my entire life to buy the automobile. My only child, Landon, steals every money to satisfy her. I had a sudden buzzing clarity instead of anger or sorrow. 6 months ago, I was a different woman. That me would have sobbed in the vehicle and allowed this experience to shatter her. Not right now. I wasn't here to be pitied today. I came here to get back what was rightfully mine. As she adjusted her lip gloss and fixed the rearview mirror, Chloe turned slightly in the driver's seat. That expression from the first day Landon brought her home came back to me. Kind, courteous, and even endearing. Once she had referred to me as Mama D. She stated she wanted to know about our family's customs and cooked a cheesecake. Every grin captured my heart. I now observed the manager of the dealership silently gesturing to his staff. 2 staffers at the office and 1 mechanic. Everyone was aware of the situation. 3 weeks prior, I had first purchased controlling shares in the dealership on false pretenses. I walked back in as the owner for the first time today. "Let's take this baby out for a spin," Chloe exclaimed, her voice echoing around the lot. Her pals applauded. She turned the key after that. Nothing. The motor failed to start. She made several attempts. Her smile cracked, then fell away entirely. A technician came to her window and knocked courteously. Confused, Chloe rolled it down. Her respiration was increasing with terror, and I could practically hear it. He handed her a printed paper and apologized. "The vehicle will need to be held. There is a problem with the title." Chloe took a look at the paper. "What is this? What title issue do you mean? This car was paid for by me." I stepped into her line of sight and said, "Actually, I did." Like she was attempting to make sense of an unreported nightmare, she blinked once and again. "Darla?" Calmly I nodded. "Hi, Chloe." Her buddies turned to face me, mute and perplexed. "That's her mother-in-law," one of them muttered. I approached the car slowly and deliberately, coming to a stop only a few feet away. I spoke without faltering. "This car belongs to me because your husband bought it with money that was taken from my account without my consent." Chloe's attempt to laugh it off ended up sounding like a nervous choking. "You cannot simply show up and accept it." I made eye contact with her. "Legally, I can and I am." That was the time. The moment I regained my voice, my position, and my authority, along with the money that had been taken. She shouted to her pals to switch off their cameras as she slammed the door and got out of the car, her cheeks flushed. However, they didn't. They gazed. They observed. And I stood there as the lady who would not go away, not as the victim. Tell us where you're viewing from in the comments section before we begin. For more impactful tales, remember to like, share, and subscribe. I was just Darla Whitmore, a 62-year-old retired school administrator with a tiny garden, a quiet house, and a son I believed I could trust with my life. Before the betrayal, before the stillness, and before the restless nights. I had calm yet busy days. Walking around the neighborhood and waving to the same runners I had seen for years occupied my mornings. Even when it was only me at the table, I continued to prepare Sunday pot roasts. I had been widowed for more than 10 years. Over time, the pain over my husband Marcus's untimely death had subsided, leaving behind a profound gratitude for the years we spent together. "Darla, you're stronger than you realize," Marcus would often tell me. However, avoid letting the world learn the hard way. Then there came my pride and pleasure, my only child, Landon. After Marcus passed away, I raised him largely by myself. When son changed his major 3 times, I was the mom who volunteered at every school event, prepared homemade lunches, and stayed up all night helping him revise college applications. I paid off the remainder of his school loan debt using my money. I kept the fact that I had sold the land Marcus had given me a secret from him. I couldn't stand to watch him fail because he was having trouble. I wanted to hug Landon the way I imagined Marcus would have when he married Chloe. She was youthful, attractive, and full of life. At first, her grin gave you the impression that she genuinely liked you. She brought over photo frames with the words, "Family is everything," engraved on them and dubbed me Mama D. "This is good," I said. "My son is content. He is creating a life." Despite their lack of possessions, they had one another. I thought so. Like clockwork, I transferred a little amount of money from my side tutoring jobs and pension into a different savings account each month. It wasn't for me. Not at all. I always imagined that Landon and Chloe could eventually want assistance with a down purchase. Or perhaps when I'm older, I'll move in with them to share a house once again and provide some stability. I pictured a comfortable room upstairs with a sunrise-facing window. I had no intention of buying anything ostentatious or seeing the world. All I wanted was to always have a little something to contribute and to never be a burden. Mothers are like that. We get ready in silence. We make sacrifices. In the winter, we hide securely like squirrels. The women my age who lived next door frequently made jokes about remodeling their kitchens or taking lavish vacations. I gave a courteous grin. All that wasn't necessary for me. I was at ease. My kid was born. That was sufficient. Landon would kiss me on the cheek, ask for leftovers, and then sprawl out on my living room couch like he was 10 years old again whenever he came over. He would tell me that Chloe wanted to trade automobiles again, or that she was stressed out from work. But Mom, we're getting by. Every time he departed, I made sure he had food or a small gift in an envelope. You still have a home here, even $100 seemed to convey. One afternoon in particular comes to mind. We were enjoying iced tea on my back patio. The lavender plants were just beginning to flower, and there was a gentle wind. "You've always been my rock, Mom," he added, turning to face me. "I'll make it up to you one day." I remember that moment because I believed him, not because of what he said. I would have laughed it off if someone had warned me back then that Landon would eventually deplete that savings account without my consent. Not my boy. Not the son I cradled during panic attacks, heartbreaks, and fevers. Not the guy who, following my operation, stayed up with me all night to make sure I could sleep. No, my world consisted of earned trust, kind routines, and faith in the woman he selected and the son I nurtured. And that's what made the whole thing ache even more, because you lose more than just money when someone you care about opens the door to treachery. You also lose the version of yourself that thought you were protected. It was a Saturday day. In the early spring, the sort when everything seems cozy, secure, and comfortable as the sun filters through the windows. I had asked Chloe and Landon to join me for lunch. Nothing special, just homemade lemon pie, sweet tea, and chicken salad. Sandwiches. I recall using my mother's flower-patterned china to set the table. In an attempt to add even more warmth, I even lighted one of the candles Chloe had given me for Christmas. With her hair curled, sunglasses on indoors, and a pocketbook hanging from her wrist like a fancy prize, Chloe arrived with her typical flair. Landon followed her, nodding but hardly there, phone in hand. We had a brief conversation, or rather, I asked them questions and they gave me hurried, preoccupied responses. "How is your job?" "All right." "How is the flat doing?" "Minimum." "What are your plans for the weekend?" Chloe flipped her hair and remarked, "Bunch with friends?" "Actually, we might go look at cars." I paused at the final part. "Oh, something wrong with the one you have now?" I inquired, looking up from the tea I was pouring. Chloe gave a shrug. "It's kind of embarrassing to pull up to events in a Civic, but it's fine, but it's like a few years old." Startled by her candor or conceit, I blinked. I was unable to identify which. Landon continued to browse without saying anything. The words that would reverberate in my memory for months were then said by her, and she laughed, a sharp, delighted chuckle. "Mama D, you most likely have savings that you will never even use. Why don't you take care of us before you die?" The atmosphere froze. I thought she would grin and tell me she was kidding, but instead she just sipped her tea and glanced away, unconcerned. Landon laughed uneasily. "Mom, she's joking." Even though I chuckled quietly, I stiffened within. I can't recall consuming the entire dinner. I admit that I gave them second helpings, smiled, and even packaged up any leftovers for them to take. But in the midst of that afternoon, a little jagged break had appeared. I kept hearing her voice after I finished the dishes and settled down to work on my crossword puzzle later that evening. Why don't you take care of us before you die? It seemed so entitled and false, as if my years of struggle and my life were nothing more than a bank account that was simply waiting to be spent. I told myself it was a generational divide, a lousy joke. These days, young people had different meanings. However, I knew in my heart that wasn't it. Her tone had an air of calculation, as if she had studied saying it without flinching. Landon, too. She hadn't been corrected by him. He didn't appear horrified. He had chuckled. I made an effort to let things go. Yes, I did. In the hopes that she would laugh and tell me I was being sensitive. I even contacted my friend Marlene the next day and told her about it. Instead, she fell silent. "That's not funny, Darla," he remarked. "That serves as a warning." Nevertheless, I was unable to face Landon. Perhaps I was scared of shoving him away. Perhaps I didn't want to accept what my instincts told me. I convinced myself that I was exaggerating. He was my son. He would not harm me in any way. Furthermore, hadn't I always advised him to come to me if he ever got into trouble? "I'll assist you," he called a week later. "Hi, Mom. Just a quick query. What is your savings amount?" I initially thought he was preparing a joke, but he didn't share my laughter. "Just curious," he said. "Chloe suggested that we think about co-signing or something when we were discussing acquiring a new automobile. You might be willing to help," I informed her. I paused. "Landon, that's a big ask." "I understand. All we're doing is exploring our alternatives. There is no pressure." However, pressure was present. Not in his voice, but in his silence. Chloe's voice has previously tried things out. The manner in which Landon was aware that I had previously always answered yes. We hung up, and I didn't weep. As I gazed at the wall, a strange sensation settled in my chest. It wasn't rage. Not quite yet. It was uncertainty. I began to have doubts about the youngster I had raised for the first time in my life. The change did not occur all at once. At first, it was as silent as the gradual trickle of a leak behind a wall. I sensed the rot growing even though I couldn't see it yet. Landon didn't get in touch for about 3 weeks following that call. No "how are you, Mom?" and no check-ins. Not even a shared video or a meme that he used to send. He was busy, I reminded myself. Work must be hard. Or perhaps Chloe's relatives were in town. I offered every justification I could, but the silence grew more oppressive. Then one night I received a text from Chloe, not Landon. A clipped message, basic. "Hey, could you please provide your tax details? Landon promised to assist us with our loan application, just an anticipation, without a welcome or a question mark." For several minutes, I gazed at my phone. Not even a please, just a transaction with no background or explanation. I didn't respond. I gave Landon a call instead. Distracted, he responded. A TV was on in the background and I could hear dishes clattering faintly. "Hey, Mom. Yes, you were most likely texted by Chloe about it. It's only for the vehicle." "What vehicle?" Trying to speak steadily, I asked. He let out a sigh like if I were bothering him. "The one I already mentioned. We got a great bargain, but using some collateral or having you as a co-signer would be beneficial." "Collateral," I said again. "Mom, you have good credit. It would literally take 5 minutes to complete this." It began at that point. The erasure, not the betrayal. I had lost my humanity. I served as a resource. I informed him that I needed time to reflect. He appeared annoyed by that. "Okay," he said. "Don't wait too long, though. It's a temporary offer." Before I could utter another word, he hung up. Every connection seemed strange, chilly, and transactional after that. He no longer inquired about my garden or whether I had seen any recent films. I no longer heard "I love you" at the conclusion of our phone conversations. I thought I was speaking to a customer service agent rather than my own child because of the way his voice sounded. Chloe, on the other hand, stopped acting. I brought a handmade strawberry pie to a family cookout that my niece Amber was hosting. Oh, Darla always brings her little casseroles, Chloe replied, turning to face someone after taking a glance at it. Minimal casseroles. It hurt more than I anticipated the way she said it, dismissively, as if I were some holdover from the past. Her remarks stuck with me all afternoon, despite my best efforts to laugh it off. She and Landon crowded at the far end of the table, giggling and whispering like high school kids as we sat down to eat. After giving me a couple quick glances, I heard Chloe saying something behind her hand. I was once a part of him, a part of things. I was just around now. I was gradually losing my identity as his mother, the lady who had sewn his Halloween costumes, stayed up with him during fevers, and written him letters every week when he was studying overseas. I promised to take them to breakfast one day simply to catch up. Chloe agreed, but she spent the entire time browsing through her phone when we arrived at the cafe. Landon didn't say much. When the check finally arrived, he looked up and waited for me to grab it. Out of habit, love, or some dwindling aspect of myself that still seemed important, I did. But when we got up to leave, I heard Chloe mutter behind me, "Well, at least she's still good for something." They laughed. That was the moment something cracked inside me. Not loudly, not with fire, but with finality. I smiled, said goodbye, and walked to my car like nothing had happened. But in my chest, a slow, burning grief had begun. The kind you don't cry over because there's no one left to comfort you. You just carry it quietly, alone. At home that night, I didn't make dinner. I didn't light candles or read. I sat in my recliner, staring at the ceiling fan as it spun and spun and spun. Somewhere inside me, something was shutting down. Not love, not yet, but the version of me who believed she was still seen. She was beginning to disappear. It happened on a Tuesday. I remember because I had just come back from my volunteer shift at the local library. Tuesdays were always a little special to me, my quiet day to feel useful, needed. I helped reshelf books, chatted with the regulars, and spent a little extra time with the children who came in after school. That day, I had even picked up a paperback. For Chloe, some trendy novel I'd seen on her wish list the last time we'd talked. I thought, maybe if I drop it off, we can have tea. Maybe today will be different. I baked banana bread that morning, wrapped it in foil while it was still warm. Then I carefully placed the book on top, tied the bundle with twine, and drove the 20 minutes to their apartment. I didn't call ahead. I wanted it to be a surprise. Back in the day, Landon loved my surprise visits. He'd open the door like a boy again, throw his arms around me and shout, "Mom's here!" I pulled into the parking lot, heart fluttering with some foolish hope. I walked up the narrow stairwell and knocked. The door opened halfway. Chloe stood there in a silk robe, eyes wide, expression unreadable. "Oh," she said, voice flat. Hi, sweetheart," I said gently. "I was just in the neighborhood. Thought I'd bring you something." I held up the wrapped banana bread and the book, smiling as warmly as I could. She didn't smile back. From inside, I could hear voices, laughter, music, wine glasses clinking. "I didn't know you had company," I added quickly. "I can come back later." She didn't move to open the door farther. Instead, she stepped out, pulling it closed, behind her until only a sliver of the party was visible. "We're hosting a little girls' night," she said. "Wine, charcuterie, that kind of thing. Landon's out with his friends." "Oh, that sounds fun." "It is." Her eyes flicked to the banana bread. I extended it again. "Just a small treat, and I saw this book on your list." So she cut me off. "That's thoughtful, but honestly, Darla, you don't have to keep doing this stuff." I blinked. "Doing what?" "Dropping by unannounced. Bringing little gifts. It's sweet, but it's a lot sometimes." I felt my cheeks go warm. "I didn't mean to intrude. I just wanted to..." She sighed. "Look, I don't mean this rudely, but you really don't have to keep trying so hard. We're fine." Something cracked inside me, but I held my smile. "Of course," I said softly. "I'll let you get back to your evening." I turned to walk down the stairs, my arm still holding the banana bread and the book. Then I heard it. One of her friends inside, loud enough for the entire block to hear. "Was that your mother-in-law? That was awkward." And then laughter, sharp, cruel, echoing. Chloe didn't correct her. She didn't defend me. She just slipped back inside and shut the door. I stood at the bottom of the stairs, frozen. I hadn't felt that kind of sting since I was a child and overheard two girls whispering about my hand-me-down shoes. It was the same feeling: smallness, shame, the realization that you're nothing more than background noise in someone else's life. When I got home, I placed the banana bread on the kitchen counter. The twine had unraveled slightly. The smell was still warm and sweet. I didn't eat it. I didn't even unwrap it. I just sat at the table and stared at it until the sun dipped behind the hills. Later that night, I tossed the book into the trash. Not out of spite, but because I finally understood something. I wasn't welcome. Not in their home, not in their lives, not even in the narrative they were building together. I was the outdated extra, the woman who'd given too much and was now inconvenient. That was the moment it all clicked. Not just the cruelty, but the comfort with which she'd delivered it. This wasn't an accident. This was her boundary, her line in the sand. And Landon, he'd drawn it with her. After that night, something inside me went completely still. It wasn't rage or heartbreak. It was colder than that. It was the kind of silence that comes after too many chances have been given. I didn't call Landon. I didn't text. I didn't send follow-up messages or hope you're well notes. For the first time in my life, I sat with the feeling that maybe, just maybe, I was no longer part of my own son's world. And he never reached out. 2 weeks passed, then 3. I told myself he was busy, that Chloe was probably keeping him distracted, but deep down I knew better. He wasn't calling because he didn't think he needed to until one afternoon when he finally did. "Hey, Mom," he said, far too casual, for the amount of time that had gone by. "We just bought a car. We had bought from a family-owned business, a dealership Marcus once dreamed of owning someday. We used to joke about it, Whitmore Motors, where honesty's included in the price tag." My breath caught in my throat. I ran downstairs and opened my laptop, the dealership where Chloe got her car. It wasn't just any dealership. It was that one, the same lot. The name had changed, but the location hadn't, and it was up for sale publicly, quietly. The online listing mentioned rapid buyout opportunities and desire for cash offers. I sat in the dark, staring at that screen, heart pounding. It was like fate had left the door cracked open just enough for me to notice. And suddenly, something inside me shifted. Not all at once, but like the tiniest flicker of warmth returning to a cold room. I closed the laptop, pressed the photo to my chest, and whispered, "Marcus, maybe this is it. Maybe this is what you meant." But before anything else, I knew I had to face what I had become. The next morning, I stood in front of the mirror. For the first time in weeks, I really looked. My skin was dull. My eyes were hollow. I was shrinking inside and out. And then I said aloud, "This is not who I am." I ran a hot bath. I combed my hair. I put on lipstick. Not for anyone else, for me. Because I had reached my rock bottom. But I wasn't going to stay there. The dealership photo had lit something inside me. But it wasn't until I began digging through my old files that everything changed. It started with a shoebox. I'd gone into the guest room closet looking for my old tax records, the ones Landon had tried to get access to weeks earlier. That closet hadn't been touched in years. It still smelled faintly of cedar and dust, like the past had been waiting patiently for me to open it again. At the very back, under a pile of folders, was a navy blue shoebox labeled in Marcus's handwriting, "For Darla, important." I almost didn't open it. Part of me was afraid it would just be more grief, more reminders of what I'd lost. But I did. Inside were 3 things. A crumpled newspaper clipping from 1991 about the original Whitmore Auto Group being sold to new ownership. Marcus had circled it in red and scribbled in the margin, "Still want to own this one day?" A flash drive with his initials etched on a sticker, and a handwritten letter folded twice, worn at the edges. I opened the letter first. Darla, if you're reading this, I'm probably not with you anymore. And that thought breaks my heart. But I also know you. You don't crumble. You don't retreat. You reset. That's what you've always done. If life has backed you into a corner, I want you to know two things. You are smarter than the people who underestimate you. And you are stronger than the ones who've taken from you. Don't fight fire with fire. Fight it with legacy. You don't owe anyone kindness if they've repaid your love with betrayal. Rebuild on your own terms. And if the opportunity ever presents itself, buy back what they think they took from you. Love you forever, Marcus. I sat down right there on the carpet, eyes full of tears, the letter shaking in my hands. It wasn't just a note. It was a map, a message from the man who knew I would one day need to be reminded of my own worth. I turned on the old desktop computer in the corner and plugged in the flash drive. Inside were documents, dozens of them, Marcus's savings spreadsheets, dealership research, notes on potential buyers, and even correspondence with a man named Clarence Hodges, a private investor he'd once partnered with on a real estate deal. Emails had stopped a few months before Marcus passed, but the final message was titled, "If Darla ever comes calling, trust her. She finishes what I start." I stared at those words for a long time. I didn't know what moved me more, Marcus's belief in me or the chilling realization that everything I needed was already in my hands. The dealership Chloe had flaunted online, the one she proudly paraded as a symbol of their new lifestyle, that was the same lot Marcus once dreamed of owning. It felt surreal, as if time had folded over itself, handing me a second chance. I made copies of everything. Then I called a friend of mine, Carolyn, a retired business attorney who once helped me with estate planning after Marcus passed. I asked her to come over for coffee. When she arrived, I laid out the documents, the clipping, the flash drive, and the letter. She read in silence. Then she looked at me and said, "Do you want to make a move?" I nodded quietly, carefully, but yes. The next morning, Carolyn arranged a meeting with the dealership's current broker. The listing was still active, but interest had been low. Financially, the business was on shaky ground. A few silent investors were hoping for a quick, cash-heavy buyout, the kind that avoided too many questions. I didn't reveal who I was. Not yet. I simply asked for numbers, contracts, conditions. And when I left that office, something had shifted. I no longer felt invisible. I no longer felt like the discarded mother or the humiliated woman on the stairs. I was a woman with a plan, with leverage. That night, I stood in the kitchen, held Marcus's letter one last time, and whispered, "I see it now." Because that was the moment I stopped mourning what was taken and started preparing to take it back. They say the quietest moments are the ones when everything truly changes. For me, it wasn't a thunderclap or a burst of righteous anger. It was a slow inhale, a long, steady breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding for months. I woke up the morning after meeting the broker and made coffee the way Marcus used to like it. Strong, black, 1 sugar cube. I poured it into his old mug, the one with the chipped handle that said, "Best dad in the world." I hadn't touched it in years. That morning, I needed to. I carried it to the back porch, barefoot, the boards cold under my feet, and sat in the same chair where I used to read bedtime stories to Landon on summer nights. The sun was still low, a soft peach blush across the horizon. For once, I didn't feel the ache of loneliness or the weight of grief. I felt calm, ready. There's a moment in every woman's life when she stops asking for permission, when the apology lodged in her throat dissolves, when she no longer waits to be invited into rooms she helped build. This was that moment. I wasn't plotting revenge. I wasn't nursing resentment. I was waking up to the truth. I had been the backbone, the hand that held everything steady. And now I had the right to stand tall without guilt. I opened my notebook and began writing, not out of anger, but out of clarity. A plan, quiet, methodical, precise. I listed every financial asset I had left, including the small teaching pension I'd been saving for emergencies. I calculated what I'd need to contribute toward the dealership buyout to secure controlling interest. It wasn't enough to destroy them. I didn't want to destroy them. I wanted to own the very thing they thought I was too fragile to understand. And more than that, I wanted my dignity back. In the days that followed, I cleaned the house. Not the kind of cleaning you do before guests come over, but the kind that clears energy. I donated old clothes, boxed up photo albums, and even tossed Chloe's soy candles into the trash. I wasn't bitter. I was pruning, making room for something new. I reconnected with Clarence Hodges, the investor Marcus had written about. He was still alive, still sharp, and coincidentally still active in the local investment scene. When I called, he remembered Marcus immediately. His voice went quiet when I said my name. Marcus always said, if you ever showed up, it meant something big was about to happen, he said. We met for lunch the next day. I showed him the flash drive, the documents, the plan. He listened, nodded slowly, then leaned forward and said, "You're not here to ask for help. You're here to take your place." I smiled. Exactly. We formed a small partnership. He would bring some financial backing. I would retain majority ownership. I insisted on full operational control and made it clear this wasn't a vanity project. This was a reclamation. Meanwhile, I started showing up at the dealership as a consultant. No one knew who I was. I wore neutral clothes, kept my hair pulled back, and asked questions like a curious investor doing due diligence. The sales team welcomed me cautiously. The receptionist said I looked familiar. I kept my head down. I kept my voice calm. I kept waking up. I began spending mornings reading trade magazines, learning everything I could about inventory flow, lease agreements, manufacturer bonuses, things Chloe and Landon never even considered when they blew $38,000 on a showpiece SUV. I studied their financial missteps like a surgeon studying an X-ray. I wasn't building my next move out of spite. I was building it from stillness, from clarity, from a fire reignited not by revenge but by self-respect. One morning, while sitting in the dealership waiting area during one of my anonymous visits, I saw Chloe's Instagram post flash across the screen of a nearby customer's phone. She was smiling in the car. The caption read, "Queen things only, paid in full." And something inside me clicked again. Not in anger, in purpose, because she was right. It was paid in full, and now the payment was about to be returned. By the time summer rolled in, I had become a different woman. Not louder, not colder, just clearer. Every morning, I woke up with a mission. No one knew what I was building. Not the neighbors, not my old friends, not even the dealership employees, especially not Landon or Chloe. They hadn't called since our last conversation, and I hadn't reached out. They believed I had gone quietly into the shadows, bitter, broken, irrelevant. That belief was the greatest advantage I had. I operated in silence, like a current just beneath the surface. No announcements, no warnings, just steady movement towards something far greater than retaliation. Restoration. After securing my partnership with Clarence, I began the acquisition process under the name Whitmore Equity LLC, a quiet nod to the last name Chloe would never think to associate with authority. Our offer was clean, all cash, and precisely timed. The dealership's original owner had grown tired of mounting debt and was desperate to exit. Clarence, who had a reputation for discretion and speed, handled most of the face time. I was the silent force behind every decision, every clause, every condition. The only non-negotiable, I wanted full operational control. Every title, every paper trail, every ledger was to pass through my hands. While negotiations progressed, I spent my days preparing the battlefield, not with weapons, but with knowledge. I reviewed the dealership's transaction logs. I found my money in the system, right there on the sales receipt for Chloe's SUV. My account number, partially redacted, still linked to the payment file. The clerk must have assumed it was a transfer from a joint account, which it was, but no one had verified my consent. It was a procedural gap, a legal crack, and I stepped right through it. I flagged the car's title in the system. Legally, I now had the power to place a hold on any vehicle associated with disputed funds, and once the dealership became mine, that title would be mine as well. But I didn't act just yet. Not until everything was perfectly in place. Outside the office, I cleaned up my finances. I cut every remaining tie to Landon. I removed his name from the emergency contact list at my doctor's office. I rewrote my will and left him out entirely for now. I didn't cry about it. I didn't waver. I simply drew the line and stepped over it. I also reached out to Carolyn, my attorney friend, and asked her to prepare a legal affidavit outlining the unauthorized use of my funds for the vehicle purchase. I didn't file it yet. I wasn't interested in dragging my son into court. Not unless he forced my hand, but I wanted it ready, signed, sealed, and notarized just in case. A week before the ownership transfer was finalized, I visited the dealership one last time as a consultant. I walked the showroom floor. I chatted with the receptionist. I even stepped into the back lot where Chloe's SUV had come in for detailing. I didn't say a word when I saw it. I simply walked past it and smiled. It gleamed in the sunlight, shiny, smug, and fragile, just like the life they'd built on stolen money. Inside, I met briefly with the floor manager, a young man named Kyle, who had no idea who I truly was. I asked about vehicle tracking, repo protocols, and service department policies. He answered each question with cheerful professionalism. Then I looked him straight in the eye and said, "Would you feel comfortable repossessing a vehicle if it turned out the funds used to buy it were stolen?" He blinked. Of course. If the paperwork checks out and the ownership is legally under review, it's a standard process. Good, I said, shaking his hand. That's what I needed to know. As I left the building, I stopped briefly, in front of the customer service desk, and glanced at the giant wall of framed customer photos. There in the center was Chloe, smiling like she owned the world. I traced her face with my eyes and thought, "You think I'm gone. You think I'm finished, but I'm not. I'm just getting started." The shift didn't start with an announcement. It started with silence. 3 days after the ownership transfer was finalized, I stepped inside the dealership, not as a guest, not as a consultant, but as the new majority owner. There were no balloons, no press release, no fanfare. That's not how I wanted the story to unfold. I wanted the transformation to happen exactly the way they'd treated me. Quietly, dismissively, invisibly. The irony was delicious. I dressed modestly that morning. Navy slacks, a cream blouse, my hair pulled into a low bun. No jewelry, no heels, just quiet confidence. I walked through the front doors and nodded at the receptionist, Jasmine, who still didn't recognize me despite our brief exchanges in the past weeks. "Good morning," she said. "Can I help you?" "Yes," I said kindly. "Could you let Kyle know Miss Whitmore is here for the morning walkthrough?" She blinked, then smiled politely. "Of course, I'll let him know right away." It took a moment for the information to settle. Miss Whitmore, as in the name on the new ownership documents, the name on the bank transfer that had paid off their debts, the name that now appeared quietly in the management portal every employee had access to, but hadn't looked at closely. Kyle walked out of his office moments later, tie askew, clipboard in hand. "Good morning, ma'am," he said, professional but confused. "You're the new partner owner," I corrected gently. "Clarence is a minority stakeholder. The dealership is now under my management." His eyebrows lifted. "Oh, well, welcome. We're glad to have you here." "I've actually been here before," I said with a faint smile. "Just in a different capacity." He gave a sheepish nod, likely realizing this wasn't the first time we'd spoken. "Anything you'd like to see today?" "Yes," I said. "Let's start with the service queue." We walked through the lot together. Kyle gave me an honest assessment of the inventory situation, the stalled sales, the outdated filing process. It was everything I'd already read in the reports, but hearing it aloud reaffirmed that I hadn't made a mistake. Then we reached the covered portico where recently serviced vehicles waited for pickup, and there it was, Chloe's SUV. White, shiny, brand new leather interior, the emblem on the hood catching sunlight like it was on display in a showroom. It looked like a prize, a reward, a symbol of status. I paused in front of it. Kyle looked at me. "That one's ready for pickup today," he said casually. "Routine checkup. Belongs to a Chloe Bennett." I nodded slowly. "There's going to be a hold on that vehicle." He frowned. "A hold?" "Effective immediately. Ownership is under dispute. The purchase was made using funds from a misappropriated account. Mine." He hesitated. You sure you want to escalate this internally? I'm not escalating anything. I'm protecting an asset. Pull the title file. You'll find my name listed as the original account holder. Legal has already flagged it. The car stays until I authorize its release. Kyle stared at me, half impressed, half alarmed, but he nodded. Understood. We walked back inside. I could feel the energy begin to shift. Staffers whispered behind desks. Jasmine stared as I passed, eyes wide, piecing things together. Word would spread fast. The new owner wasn't just some investor. She was a mother with a ledger, a woman with receipts, and she wasn't here to be polite. That afternoon, Chloe called the front desk in a rage. Jasmine transferred the call to Kyle, who calmly told her the car couldn't be released without owner approval. When she demanded to know who had authorized the hold, Kyle said 2 words, Ms. Whitmore. She went silent. The next day, Chloe came storming into the dealership in her designer heels and oversized sunglasses, dragging one of her friends behind her. She marched straight to the service desk, demanding answers. Jasmine calmly directed her to the office. I was already inside, waiting. I didn't stand when she entered. She threw her bag onto the chair and hissed, "What kind of game is this?" "No game," I said simply. "That car was paid for with my stolen retirement, and now it's under review." "You can't just take it," she spat. "I already did." Her face turned red. Her friend tried to step in, but I looked at her without flinching. "This is a private conversation. Feel free to wait outside." The friend left. Chloe sat down hard. "I'll ruin you," she whispered. "No, Chloe," I said. "You already tried, but I'm still here, and now I'm the one holding the psyche keys." She didn't speak after that. She just sat there, quiet, small, exactly how they had made me feel. And in that silence, the power shifted. Not with yelling, not with violence, but with proof, with patience, and with a woman who knew exactly what had been taken from her and exactly how to get it back. The room was so quiet. I could hear the second hand ticking on the wall clock behind Chloe. She sat across from me, arms crossed, eyes narrowed, but I saw it. The tremble in her jaw, the shift in her shoulders. It wasn't anger anymore. It was fear, the kind that bubbles up when someone realizes they've underestimated the wrong person. I leaned forward, rested my hands calmly on the desk, and met her stare head-on. "This isn't a stunt," I said. "This is business, and more importantly, this is justice." She scoffed, trying to recover her edge. "You think you can just walk in here and repossess my car like you're someone?" I didn't repossess anything, I replied. I bought the dealership legally, quietly, and then I flagged a fraudulent purchase. My money, stolen from my account, used without my permission to buy your car. "You're twisting everything," she said, but her voice faltered. "Landon said." "I don't care what Landon said," I interrupted, my voice cool but sharp. "What I care about is that neither of you thought I'd notice or that I'd fight back. But I did." She was silent. I let the silence stretch. "I was the woman you dismissed," I continued. "The one who brought banana bread and books and tried to be part of your life. The woman you rolled your eyes at. The woman whose money you took without asking. But I'm not that woman anymore." Chloe leaned back in the chair, arms folded tighter now, a wall of defiance rising. "So what? You just want to humiliate me?" "No," I said. "That part took care of itself. You see, Chloe, people don't humiliate you. You do that all on your own by pretending kindness is weakness, by mistaking silence for ignorance. You called me extra weight. You laughed with your friends while I stood outside your door holding banana bread like a fool. You took what wasn't yours and expected applause." Her lips tightened. I could see the shame rising beneath the surface. But I wasn't finished. "I'm not here to ruin your life. I'm here to reclaim mine." She looked away then, toward the window, blinking, quickly, but I didn't stop. "I don't need an apology from you. I don't need your respect. But I want you to know this. Every time you sit behind the wheel of that car, every time you post a photo pretending you earned it, you'll remember this moment. You'll remember the day I walked in and took back what was mine. A knock came at the door. Kyle poked his head in. Ms. Whitmore, the tow crew is ready to move the vehicle. Shall I give the order? I glanced at Chloe. Her eyes were wide now, stunned. Her confidence, the smugness she wore like a perfume, was gone. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I just nodded. Yes, thank you. Have it towed to storage until we finish the legal audit. Chloe stood abruptly. You don't have to do this in front of everyone. I met her gaze one last time. No, I said, standing, slowly. But you had no problem flaunting the theft in front of everyone. You posted the car on Instagram with paid in full. Well, it wasn't, and now it is. She stepped back as if struck, the sting of truth finally landing. I walked around the desk, heels clicking slowly against the tile, and opened the door for her. Have a good afternoon, Chloe. She stormed out without another word, leaving behind only the faint scent of perfume and defeat. I stood in the doorway watching as the flatbed tow truck pulled into the lot. A few customers turned their heads as the SUV, the same one Chloe had boasted about for weeks, was loaded and secured. No yelling, no scene, just silence. The same kind of silence I had been handed for months. But this time, it wasn't silence from abandonment. It was the silence of completion, the silence of justice. And for the first time in what felt like years, I breathed it in like oxygen. I turned to Kyle and said, let's get back to work, because I had reclaimed more than a car that day. I had reclaimed my place. I thought repossessing the car would be the end. That was the poetic finish I had imagined, a clean, quiet reclaiming of what had been taken from me. But sometimes life has its own way of writing the final chapter. The twist came 3 weeks later in a white envelope slid under my door. It was a legal notice. Thick, official, heavy with arrogance, a letter from Landon's attorney. He was suing me, claiming emotional distress, unlawful repossession, and intentional interference with marital assets. I read it 3 times, each word soaking in deeper than the last. He hadn't called. He hadn't asked to talk. He hadn't even written me a note. This was how my son chose to reach out, through a lawsuit. For a moment, my body folded in on itself. I had poured my heart into this boy, raised him through grief and hardship, given up vacations and luxuries, and even part of myself to make sure he had everything. And now he was trying to drag me through the mud legally. But then I remembered. I had prepared for this. I reached for the red folder Carolyn and I had labeled contingency. Inside were all the pieces he had overlooked. Copies of bank statements, screenshots of texts, emails where he admitted to using my account, a notarized affidavit confirming I never gave verbal or written consent for the withdrawal, the full transaction logs, even Chloe's Instagram post bragging about the purchase. I packaged everything into a new folder, labeled it Response, and called Carolyn. She read the lawsuit once, raised her eyebrows, and said, "We're not just defending this, we're counterfiling." Counterfiling? "Oh, yes," she said. "We're filing a claim for financial fraud, elder abuse, and civil theft. And trust me, the court will take it seriously." It felt surreal. I never imagined being in a legal battle against my own child. But I also never imagined he'd become someone capable of stealing from the very person who loved him most. And then came the moment that changed everything. 2 days before the scheduled court mediation, Landon's lawyer called Carolyn. He was nervous, defensive, sweating even over the phone. "Can we settle this privately?" he asked. "No court, no press, no escalation." "Why?" Carolyn asked, calm as ever. There was a pause. Then he said it. Because someone leaked the story. Someone, we never found out who, had tipped off a local reporter. The article ran online under the headline, "Woman Buys Dealership Reclaims. Car Bought with Stolen Savings from Her Own Son." It wasn't just gossip. It was detailed, accurate, devastating. The reporter had somehow obtained screenshots, property records, dealership transfer files. Chloe's Instagram post was embedded. The story exploded, shared hundreds of times, picked up by 2 major news blogs. Suddenly, the story wasn't just about me. It was about women like me, mothers who had been used, dismissed, erased, people left comments like, "She's my hero. Quiet revenge is the best revenge. You don't mess with a woman who built something from nothing. Every Chloe in the world just got served." I didn't bask in it. I didn't brag. But I did allow myself one small act of closure. I wrote a letter to Landon. "You had every chance to make things right. You chose pride instead of apology. You chose silence instead of ownership. I am no longer your safety net. I am no longer your secret bank account. I am no longer blind. What you've lost is not the car or the money. What you've lost is your place in my life. If one day you find the courage to be the man I raised, you'll know where to find me. Until then, I release you with nothing but the truth." Mom. I didn't send it. Alongside Marcus's letter, I wrapped it up and put it in my fireproof safe. Both the youngster who shattered me and the man who built me. The case was abruptly abandoned later that week, along with a settlement offer and a non-disclosure agreement. The money was not taken by me. It wasn't what I wanted. Instead, I asked Carolyn to transfer the money to a nearby women's shelter, in my name, with the stipulation that it be used to assist elderly ladies who had been abused financially by family members. I received a personal call from the shelter director. She sobbed. Since this wasn't charity, I didn't. Justice was served. Not the noisy sort, not the theatrical type, the last, indisputable sort. Nearly 2 months have passed since the AITA case was dismissed. The dealership was operating more efficiently than before. Clarence had put me in touch with a marketing agency that rebranded the area with the new slogan, Whitmore Auto, and Kyle was taking over as operations head. It was straightforward and sincere, just as my family should have been. I wasn't turning around. No more. Then the letter arrived. On a Wednesday, it arrived. My name, scribbled in blue ink, is the only indication on the envelope. There is no return address. Initially, I believed it may be from the shelter, or perhaps from someone who wanted to share their experience after reading the post. Since the news attention, those letters had been coming in consistently. However, as soon as I opened it, I recognized the handwriting. It belonged to Landon. "I've written this letter 100 times and erased each draft, Mom. I have no idea if you will even read it. And I'm not sure if you'll mind if you do. However, I must say this nonetheless. I was mistaken. What we and I did wasn't only careless. It was unkind. For the last 3 weeks, I've been trying to persuade myself that I was just anxious, desperate, or under pressure from Chloe. In actuality, though, I made a decision, one that is self-centered. I also lost more than just money. I lost you. Because of that. That article has been read by me a dozen times. Something clicked when I saw your name next to mine in that headline. You were more than simply my mother. You had a name, a life, and a history as a woman. And I was like a bank to you. As if you had no claim to dignity or boundaries. I don't ask for pardon. However, I would want to wait in front of the door until you determine whether or not I can ever be allowed back in, even if it is cracked. Landon, love. I spent a long time sitting with the letter in my lap. There was no explanation regarding Chloe, no apology for the lawsuit. But in my son's remarks, I noticed something I hadn't seen in a long time, humility. I refrained from crying, I didn't tremble. I just folded the letter and put it next to Marcus's in my safe, between the son who was struggling to remember how to, and the dad who had trusted me. I visited my favorite cafe that weekend, the small nook where Marcus and I used to grab tea, after church. In order to finish the dealership's fall schedule, I brought my ledger notebook. However, I kept thinking about the letter. I took a blank note card out. Not a card, not a text, not an email, something tangible that can be grasped in the hand. I just wrote, I don't owe you the key, but the door isn't locked. That was it. No sign-off, no hello. I addressed it to Landon's last known address, after sealing it in an envelope. I didn't use a label for returns. I wanted no response. There was no reunion here. A recalibration took place. The fact is that nobody talks to you about mending. Hugs and heartfelt apologies aren't usually the conclusion. Standing in your truth while others writhe in the unease of their own reflection may occasionally be restorative. And I provided him with it. a clear view of the entrance without any warmth or retribution. Perhaps I will open it if he knocks one day with genuine understanding, devoid of arrogance or justifications. But he doesn't have to anymore. That is the distinction. I used to cling to the notion that I was enough, loved, and accepted. Now, whether my kid approves of it or not, I am all of those things. The youngster I reared is still on my mind. The one who once declared, "I'm going to marry someone just like you, Mom," who wept when his goldfish died, and who used to dance in the kitchen while wearing a towel over his head. I still remember that boy. One little step at a time. The man who stole from me, sued me, and covered up his wife's brutality must regain his position. And I live my life to the fullest till then, standing instead of observing or waiting. Life has a tendency of coming full circle, often in unexpected ways. As I sit here in the corner office of the dealership, I observe the sun shining on the parking lot. Under her, on the same sidewalk where Chloe used to pose with my pilfered money, Marcus used to joke that he would one day possess the same lot. But now it's mine. Not because I sought retribution. Not because I was better than anyone. Because I made the decision to stay true to myself. Most mornings begin quietly. I get there before the crew clocks in and the phones start ringing. That hour appeals to me. The fragrance of freshly brewed coffee wafting from the break room, the quiet, the buzz of fluorescent lights warming up. Sometimes I just wander the lot to be there, not to look at the merchandise, to remind myself that I am not broken, to breathe, to feel the crunch of gravel beneath my shoes. I've been rebuilt. That has some strength. Some of my clients know me from the story. Respectful nods are given by some. Last week, an elderly woman came in only to shake my hand. She said, "You accomplished what we all aspire to do." However, I didn't do it for praise. To regain my position in the world, I took this action, a world that attempted to reduce me to a quiet, elderly woman who ought to have simply come to terms with being ignored. I declined. Grandmothers, widows, retired teachers, nurses, and other women who gave and gave and gave only to be forgotten. Or worse, used are the ladies who now write to me actual letters. Some of the stories they share with me are devastating, while others remain unsolved. When I can, I respond in writing because I understand how much it matters to be told. You're not crazy. You're not by yourself. You're not finished either. When I think about Landon, a part of me will always hurt. I won't pretend that I don't miss the person I used to know. The boy who, even in his 20s, called me Mama D, raced across the yard in Halloween costumes 2 sizes too big and cuddled up to me during thunderstorms. I still harbor feelings for that version of him. However, he has changed. I've come to terms with that. Even if you love someone, you may decide not to. Allow them to harm you. It isn't unkind. Self-respect is that. Since the day Chloe bounded out of my office, I haven't seen her. They are rumored to have split up. Some claim she intends to relocate to a different state. I don't monitor. It is no longer my concern. We've closed that chapter. The fact that I'm no longer the woman with the warm banana bread and hopeful eyes at someone else's door is what counts. The keys are now in my possession. I now have a picture on my desk. From that old box in the attic, I took one. Marcus and I are standing in front of our first vehicle. With his arm around me and a smile on his face, our shadows are cast across the entire dealership lot. Every day, I gaze at that picture, and I mutter, I did it. Every day. Not to brag, but to pay tribute to the woman I once was. The woman I've become. The one who rose silently and fully, the one who gave, who suffered, who fell. For true might doesn't always shout.